Good afternoon, and welcome to another TMDSAS office hour. My name is Sulema Melendez, and I'm the communication specialist with TMDSAS. So today, as you all know, is the first day of application submission for EY 2023. So as of today, as of this morning at 8 a.m., you were able to or are able to now submit your application to TMDSAS. I did want to go ahead and say that even though you can submit your application now, we do recommend that you take your time with it. You don't rush it. Don't rush your application submission. And this session will actually cover specific sections that we want you to look out for to make sure that those are completed to the best of your ability so they don't delay the processing time on your application, as well as a couple of tips on based on horror stories that we've heard in the past, we want you to avoid. So we'll also touch base on those as well. So I'll go over the presentation. Go ahead and if you have any questions at any point, leave those in the chat. I will go back at the end of the session to answer those questions for you all. This recording will be available right after the session ends on YouTube. And we'll go ahead and get started. So let's see. First, I wanted to go over a checklist that was previously created in the past for our last application cycle. And it is available in the Inside Health Education newsroom, as you can see it on the right-hand side of the screen. That is the title and must-do list, to-do list before you hit submit on your TMDSAS application. And this will basically cover couple of these points that I have listed on the left. You want to make sure that you print a PDF copy of your application. And the reason for that is because it does allow you to see what you've entered into your application instead of looking at it on the screen. You have the PDF version and you can actually print it out as well. So you have a hard copy of it and can go through it. This is important to make sure that you have completed all of your sections. It allows you to look for typos and grammar and spelling mistakes. Instructions on how to view your PDF of the application is listed in this article. So if you go to insidehealtheducation.com and type in the search for this article, you will find a step-by-step and other things to go through and look for to make sure that your application is complete. A horror story number one is that there has been some instances in past cycles where we get applicants who call on the day of submission or even after later in the cycle, and they didn't complete their essays. So as you can see, the example that I have here is the box, and they put come back to. So they never completed their essay sections. They forgot about them. For now, like in order to move on with the rest of the application, they just entered in come back to or just special any kind of character to come back to and continue with the rest of the application. However, in some instances, some applicants do not go back. Unfortunately, the essay section activities are among a few of these sections that you cannot change post-submission. So once you submit your application, there's no going back. And it's really sad to hear and see these instances because these are easily avoidable and such a crucial part of the application. And it's really unfortunate that some applicants didn't go back and review their application. So more of the story, check on your application before you submit just to make sure that you've completed everything. There's also been other stories such as horror story number two, where we've had applicants who want to go ahead and submit the payment just to get it out of the way. Unfortunately, once you submit your payment for your application, that is the same thing as submitting your application. So we've had an applicant before who wanted to go ahead and get it over with and pay for the application. However, they ended up submitting their application, which was not complete. And unfortunately, there's nothing else that we could do about it. So just be mindful and be on the lookout for those things to make sure that you don't have any avoidable mistakes that you could have avoided in your application. And so next, we're going to talk about the specific sections that we would like for you to review and uh, thoroughly review these sections for sure, as these instances could delay your application processing time. So typically in TMDSAS, it takes anywhere between 2 to 4 weeks to process your application once you submit. Our team processes those applications in order in which they are submitted. So if you do not go back and check for these sections and look out for these specific things, that could cause a delay in your application, especially if there's back and forth. So in order to avoid those situations, we're going to go over these 5 sections and specifically what to look out for in each of these sections. So first, we're going to talk about the colleges attended questions section. A lot of applicants, there is the first part that it asks you is about academic fresh start. If you don't know about academic fresh start, more than likely it's not applicable to you. So sometimes we have applicants who select it. Please note that it's not the same thing as enrolling in college for the first time. And this is a state provision that helps eligible applicants remove certain coursework. I can't quite remember the whole thing, but it's a state. It's by the state, and you have to invoke this in an undergrad institution. So, with TMDSAS, we do not grant this provision. It is something that we recognize once you submit your transcripts. We will be able to see that you invoked this provision at that undergrad institution, and so we will be able to work with you with that. However, again, if you haven't heard of Academic Fresh Start, if that's not applicable to you, if you haven't taken coursework over more than 10 years old, this is more than likely not applicable to you. So just be on the lookout for that and not to be confused with the same thing as enrolling for college at this for the first time. So the answer to that would most likely be no for most of our applicants. The second part is releasing your information to your selected schools. So, as you can see here on the right, the last section of the colleges attended questions page asks if you agree to release your information to your professions advisor at your schools. Most applicants, in some instances, don't read the text underneath. It's smaller, so it's understandable. But it is there to let you know that you must select yes if you would like for your advisor to submit an H packet for you on your behalf. In order for them to be able to submit that for you, you need to select yes. So a lot of times we have advisors call in and say, I know I have this applicant who wants me to submit an HPAC. However, they're not popping up in my portal. What do I do? So that's the instance in which the applicant did not agree to release their information, or in this case, select yes. So select yes so that your advisor can find your name in the advisor portal and be able to upload your HP packet. The second section is the DAT and MCAT pages. So releasing your test scores to TMDSAS, a lot of times we have applicants who submit their application and there's a test date from the past. However, there doesn't seem to be any test scores already uploaded on the application. In those instances, it's a matter of releasing your scores to TMDSAS. Instructions on releasing your DAT or MCAT scores are listed in the application guide. And one thing that I really, 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 really want you all to take like away from this is to check your test dates, your date of birth, and your DNT PIN number or your AMC ID number, whichever applies to you. Make sure that they're the same on both your application and your exam accounts, or either your DAT or your AMC account. The reason for that is Horser number 3, I guess. I guess we're on number 3 at this point. But there's been times when we've had applicants who only list their test date, or there was changes to their test date. They never updated that information in their application. They never contacted us to change that. And the applicants find out, let's say sometime in February, that their score was never uploaded to their application. They did release their score to TMDSAS. However, because that test date was incorrect, it was not matching up to their application. Therefore, the schools did not take any action on that application. And they only found out about this situation pretty late in the cycle. And it's very unfortunate because, again, it is an avoidable mistake, or an avoidable something that you can might have overlooked, but it's fairly simple to resolve. And that's why we encourage applicants to go ahead and release your scores to TMDSAS. Even if you have another test date coming up later that you have planned, it's a good idea to go ahead and release your uh, test scores that you've already taken. This is just to catch any kind of instances where this might be a situation where you might encounter, such as an incorrect test date, your date of birth is off by a number, or sometimes for some applicants, the month and the date are switched. So just be mindful of that, or your PIN number, your ID number are off by a number or so. So those mistakes, we can catch those early if you make sure to take a look at these, and you know this because you release your scores. And once you do release your scores, make sure to check your status page for updates on your test score. Typically, it takes about 36 hours after you release your score for it to show up on your application. So when you're in your TMDSAS application portal, on the right-hand side, you'll find all your tabs to all the different sections in your application. Under application info, select on the status link, and it'll take you to where you can find the status of your letters, your test scores, and once transcripts are needed, they will also be in there as well. Another thing is to clarify that your DAT and MCAT test date is correct. There is some information out there. I have it listed here. For AMC specifically, they do have a 2022 schedule for MCAT test dates. And so you might want to take a look at that to confirm that you've signed up for a future test day that is on their website. Sometimes some applicants will go ahead and just list any random future test date to indicate that they're planning to take a test in the future. They're just not sure when they're going to take it. It's best to use an actual test date so that way you don't get any kind of delays with that. Moving on to college coursework, a lot of times we get instances with high credit hours reported. Typically, credit hours range from 1 to 5. And unless you have a conversion listed on your transcript, then note that, or a note in your school's course listings page if applicable as well. Um, your units, if a lot of times applicants have units instead of credit hours. And a lot of times, if those units have a range between 1 and 5, it is safe to go ahead and list your courses exactly as they appear on your transcript. Otherwise, sometimes applicants will go ahead and multiply it by like a 4 or 3, and credit hours end up being anywhere between 12, 15, and 18, which look pretty high for a course, for one course to be 18 hours long. So just be mindful of that. Take a look at that. And again, if you do have any questions about that, you can always send a message in your Team DCS portal, send a message to Team DCS, and we can have a team member help you out with that. Again, with college coursework, another issue that we see is applicants entering not yet reported grade for winter 2022 and spring 22 courses. As for the applicant user agreement that everyone signs at the beginning when starting your application, you agree that you will not submit your application until you have your spring 2022 grades. There are 3 exceptions to this rule. So spring 2022 grades must be entered into your application before you can submit, unless your school uses the quarter system. For example, BYU, their spring term starts April 26th through June 13th. So in that instance, those applicants from BYU will only have winter 2022 courses and grades listed. That is okay, because those terms are a little bit different. So if that is your situation and you're at BYU and you only have winter 2022 grades, you will be fine to go ahead and submit your application, since your spring term doesn't start until April 26th and ends until June 13th. Another exception to the rule is if you're a graduate student. Most often or not, students will receive their grades later in June. So, as if you're a grad student, you can actually go ahead and submit your application even if you don't have your grades in. And then for those who took study abroad courses for spring 2022, it is also an exception to the rule. We've gotten a lot of questions about Maymester courses. We don't have a Maymester term in the application, so you can either list it under summer or spring. But pay attention to that note about spring term. If you do decide to list your Maymester courses under your spring term, those grades must be entered in your application before you submit. So if you will not be, if your Maymester courses will not be completed until at the end of May and you want to submit your application sooner than that, it's best bet to go ahead and list those under the summer term. Otherwise, you will have application processing delays. The fourth section to take a look at is the terms attended. So there have been instances where we have applicants submit their applications and they put all their coursework under one term. So take a look at this example. As you can see from Stanford University, I attended from fall 18 to spring 2022. You do have to list each individual term that you attended at that institution. So I would have to I click the button add term, add the year 2018 fall quarter, it gets added, and then you add another term, spring, the year 2019, winter, quarter, etc. So you do have to list every term that you attended. If you list it all under one term, all your courses under one term, they will come back to you and tell you you need to correct that, and that will delay the processing of your application as well. And lastly, the last section is planned enrollment. So a lot of times we have applicants who will continue to take courses in the future. However, there's no placeholders for these planned courses. So an example that I like to give is if you have your school attendance dates from fall 2019 through spring 2023, but you only list coursework up to spring 2022, you will be sent back with a message, hey, you need to enter your courses that you plan to take in the future. This is incomplete. Um, it's a little sometimes some applicants get a little bit panicked because they don't know what they'll be taking, and that's understandable. That's okay. You can't predict the future. But for now, what you'll have to do is just create placeholders. And how do you create those? I do have an example here on the right-hand side of the screen. It's really simple. All you have to do is just enter the academic status as senior, regular course. Prefix could be to be determined, or bio, or XXX, or anything that you want to indicate on there. That's just like it's a placeholder for your information. As you can see, the course number is also just like 2, 3 X's to indicate that's like the course number, the course name to title to be determined. It's just something to show that you are going to be taking courses in the future and you didn't just rush through this section and didn't neglect it to take a look at those details. So it's just important to take a note of that and look at creating a placeholder. If you have any questions about that, there is information on the application guide. And don't worry if what you entered, of course, are going to be placeholders and it's not going to be accurate of what you will be taking. You just know that you can update the coursework section after you submit. In fact, you should. That way, if the schools do have your application at that point, they are in the loop of what courses you are planning to take, which ones you will and will not take, what your grades are. So that's something that you always want to update constantly. So after every term that you complete, make sure to go back, check and see that your courses and your grades are listed accurately. If not, send us a message and we can work with you to get that updated. So that is all that I have for this session. It's pretty short. Uh, and I'll go ahead and start looking at the questions. Again, feel free to send any questions our way as well. For now, let's see, show that. So we do have a question from John. How do I know if my DAT score are sent? My status on the ADA website says posted. Does that mean it was sent? I believe so. I'm not really familiar with the DAT, how that website looks like necessarily. But one way that you can check to see if we have received your scores is by going to your status page. Again, so in your TMDSAS application portal homepage, on the right-hand side, sorry, I'm getting my left and right mixed up today. On your right-hand side, you will see the different tabs and links to those sections in your application. It's going to be at the top under application info. If you click on status and scroll all the way down to the bottom of that page, that'll show you whether your score was received or not. And actually, let me go ahead and drop a link to the article that further explains how to check the status of your what we call supporting documents. I'll go ahead and link that in the chat for reference. Okay. So if you do have any questions on how to get to that, that is listed in the article that I just posted the link for, and it shows you step by step on how to check your status. All right, so the next question we have is from Julia. I took my SAT in 2016, and when I'm putting my scores in TMDSAS, it doesn't show where I can put my science analysis section. Okay, so we do get this question a lot. Um, I will link it back to the application guide because we do have some information about that specifically about the science score. It's listed under education history, um, analysis, and science score. All right. And that's where you can, there is some information about how to find the analysis and science score for those who took the SAT. It's not necessarily a section, but it is a combination of questions that College Board just put together and came up with like a science score. It's a cross-section test score, and the application guide does have like a screenshot and information on how to find that information. But thanks for that question. It's really common. And the next question we have is from Ethan. How do we do hours per week for activities if it is not an activity we do every week? So just do your best with that and entering your hours. I don't remember at the top of my head what we recommend for that specific situation, but why don't you send a message in your Team DCS portal? That way we can get a team member to help you out with that question. But from what I remember, I think it's okay to just, again, listen to your best of your ability um, with using approximation of hours. You can use rough estimates for your hours. They don't have to be exact, but just make sure that you don't overinflate your hours when you enter them. Okay. And the next question from Ethan, I'll go ahead and adjust your question. How should we go about listing citations? The full citations will not fit into the character limit. So that is true. Just there is a character limit for that. Just do your best with that, and maybe if you can do like a shorter version of the citation, or maybe a link to where the publication is, might be better. But just any way that you can shorten it, so that way you can list as much information as you would like on there. Okay, the next question that we have is my transcript has an AP test that I did not get credit for. Would I need to have that in my coursework? Yes, you do need to list it because it does show up on your transcript. So it seems like this is this instance in which you had AP credit, but your school did not necessarily give you the credit for it, and they went ahead and required you to take the course equivalent at the institution. But because it is listed on your transcript, you will have to list it. So the first attempt, which is your AP credit, would need to be pre-freshman, AP credit, the information exactly as it appears on your transcript, um, CR for the grade, which is credit, and then no for last time taken. And then the attempt when you did have to take this at this school and take the equivalent course to that AP credit would then be last time taken, yes. So yes, you would have to enter both those attempts twice, or as it's listed on your transcript because it's on there. And we do have another question. Hello, thank you for the information. The courses from a foreign institution I attended in the past did not have prefix and course numbers attached to the course name. How can I enter those courses? Okay, so in those instances, since there's no prefix or number, go ahead and what we recommend, and I'm not sure if it's listed on the application guide, but if it's a like a biology course, you can enter like a generic prefix and number. So you can do bio, if it was like an entry level course, like a 100, 1000 or so. If it's an advanced course, maybe like a 300, 3000, 400, or 4000 level number as the course number in there. But the schools will be able to see what your unofficial transcript looks like because you will be able to email it to info@tmdsas.com so we can upload it to your application. And the schools will have a copy. They will be able to see that in your application. So they can tell that even though that information is not listed in your foreign institution transcript, they can tell it's like a generic like bio prefix, chemistry prefix, or like a general, just 100, 300, 400 level course. And let me know if you have any follow-up questions about that. Okay. The question is actually about I can't find where I can enter the science analysis course. It just asks for the verbal reading math only. So depending on the month and the year that you enter, I know in 2016 there was a change in the sections that they included on the SAT. So that might be the reason why you are not finding the analysis and science score box. It's not generating into your application for that reason. But in this case, just do your best with entering your scores. If you did have a follow-up question with that, send us a message in your portal. I hope that answered your question, Julia. All right. See another question. If AP credit appears on two institutions' transcript, which ones do we list it from? So that is up to you. I believe this scenario is played out in instances where you attended community college, possibly for dual credit, and then your main institution. So sometimes that AP credit appears on both transcripts. So it's up to you. List it once under either transcript. So if you want to go ahead and use the community college transcript, you may, and just make sure that you list it exactly as it appears on that transcript. Or if you want to go ahead and list it under your main institution, since it's also listed on that transcript, you can also do that. Again, list it exactly as it appears on your institution's transcript. So whichever one you decide to use, just make sure that you list the course information exactly as it appears on their transcript. I see another question in the chat. This one is from Andrew. Hello, do you recommend adding some formatting to our essay, such as paragraph breaks, or should we just have one solid block of text? That is up to you. I would be mindful of being careful with those, especially if you are working on your essay responses in Microsoft Word and then copy and pasting it into your application, as sometimes that could generate an error message about special characters. Um, in those instances, you want to be careful. I have information from a colleague who gave me information about special characters that will not count. And sometimes in these instances with those breaks, if you use the tab button, it could generate that special character error message. So just be careful with that whenever you copy and paste it into your application, and just maybe possibly in your application itself, maybe do a couple of spaces, but just be careful with how you arrange that. So it's easy to read, but if it gives you an error message for special characters, that you're able to take a look at that and work around that. Let me see if I can find that information really quick, just to put it in here in the chat. Okay, let's see. All right, some of the special characters that you could get issues with, I'll go ahead and link those in the chat. All right, so just be on the lookout for those, and as well as your spacing whenever you hit enter or tab. Okay, the next question we have is how do I categorize an unpaid internship? I believe this is in refer to your activities. Let me know. But if so, if it is an activity that you want to enter, so it is up to you. It is up to the applicant to decide and determine what category to list their activities in, depending on what you want to highlight. So if you want to highlight like the values, lessons learned, just things that you want the schools to know about your specific activity. Use your best judgment to determine how you want to display that. So, what category you think is best to enter that activity under. I think that might be. what you're referring to. But if you have any questions about activities and how to enter those and see an example of how to enter a list of activities, we do have that listed in the application guide for the section activities. So it does show you how to enter your activities, an example like spreadsheet or document of activities and how you can categorize those. But again, it is up to you based on what you want to highlight, what you want the schools to know, and what you category you believe is best for that specific activity. You know your activities best, so be most you would be the expert in this matter. Okay, I'll go ahead and go to the next question. Hello, thank you for the information session. Which sections can we edit/change after we have submitted the application? That is a great question. And I'll go ahead and link it. It is listed in our application guide, but I'll go ahead and leave a link to that so you can take a look at it. Let's see. Okay. So if you click on the link, it'll take you to the approved changes after submitting. So that goes section by section and subsection each of those pages, and it lets you know if you can update that information or not. So just take a look at that. So typically it'll be the biography section, so essays, activities. Let's see. Those are the two that I remember at the top of my head. But more information can be found in that link. And the sections that I know for sure that you can always make changes to post submission is definitely your coursework section, your MCAT or DAT sections. You can actually make changes for that yourself. Any changes to letters of evaluation is also accepted, and contact information. Those are the couple sections that I remember at the top of my head. For sure, you can always make changes to. All right, let's see if I can find my spot. Okay, next question. If I work for a surgeon alongside a few anesthesiologists, can I classify that as shadowing? Shadowing them. My employer would be a surgeon, but I only watch the anesthesiologists and don't work for them. So that would be up to you. If you want to list this as shadowing experience, you can. Um, it sounds like you might be able to put this under healthcare, the healthcare and employment categories, just based on what the small description that I see here. But yeah, you can do that. So enter your shadowing experience under healthcare, and then the employment aspect of that activity under employment. So you can do that. That is an exception to the rule. The rule is list your activities once. The only exception is if your employment is also healthcare experience. If it's paid employment, you can put it under both employment and healthcare activities. And if you have an activity that also resulted in a leadership position, then you would list that one under leadership and the other respective category as well. But I think, yeah, for this question, I think you can do shadowing under healthcare and then the employment aspect under the employment category. And let me know if that addresses your question. Okay, so the next question is, I currently work as a clinical research coordinator. Can I list that as a research, healthcare, and work? I know we can double list things as both healthcare and work, but not sure about research. Again, so you have to list all your activities once. The only exceptions are if it's employment and it falls under healthcare as well, or if you have an activity under a category, but it also resulted in a leadership position, then you can also list it under leadership. Okay, another question that we see under the significant person section, I am trying to add my uncle, but there's not an option for that. Should I just choose family friend? Yeah, that could be the best option for now. And let me see if I can take a look at that section really quick. Okay, it looks like the couple of the drop-down options that we have include sibling, spouse, grandparent, or family friend. I think in this case, family friend would be a better option for you, the best option here in this situation. Okay, so the follow-up question to Jennifer's question is the AP test I did not get credit for does not have a course name or a number listed. So how would I know the course the AP, how would I know the course the AP test was supposed to go towards? Okay, in that situation, go ahead and send a message in your portal, just because I'm not quite sure how it appear, or just to follow up with that. AP credit can be difficult sometimes, and it varies by situation. Um, so in this case, Jennifer, go ahead and send us a message, and just give us list your situation and your question and the message, so that way we can have a team member take a closer look at that for you. Okay. We have another question in the chat. Again, keep listing your questions. We are here for roughly close to about 45 minutes, maybe an hour, depending on how many questions we get. So, if you have any questions, go ahead and enter them into the chat. If we were a member in an organization for a year and then got a leadership position, do we list this into different sections? Again, so if you have an activity that is going to go into one category and it resulted in a leadership position, then you can list it under leadership as well. Just be mindful that for these exceptions to the rules, again, it's employment and healthcare, and then leadership and any other category that you have that activity in. Make sure that you don't copy and paste your descriptions, because it'll look like you didn't follow instructions, or just it just doesn't look good. I don't think the schools would see that pretty well on your end. So make sure that you tailor your descriptions to the categories that you list them. So again, those are the exceptions to the rules. So if you are going to list your activities in multiple categories, just be mindful of that. If you're going to list your category under, let's say, in this case, let's go with community service. 'Cause I don't remember all of the sections necessarily, but community service, you want to go ahead and list that one. Then list the aspect of that community service for that activity, and then under leadership, explain the leadership aspect. So what you did in leadership, what was your role, etc. So just make sure that you tailor those descriptions differently, so that way the schools can see that you followed instructions, and two, that you have distinguished the differences that those activities are going to be listed under each category. All right. And so for now, we reached the end of the questions that we have so far. Again, if you do have any, this is a time to receive an answer live, or if not, like a redirect. So just let me know if you have any questions. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and link to some of the resources that we have. And we actually have those resources compiled into one page. Let's see. All right. So I'll go ahead and link to the application, about the application page that we have on our TMDSAS website. On there, we have an abundance of links to resources such as the Inside Health Education Newsroom. If you remember from the earlier part of the session, there are a couple of articles on there that give you application tips, just information in general, from either the advisors or schools or anyone that is involved in your journey with health, the pre-health journey that you're on, to be a healthcare professional. So all those articles and helpful information is listed under Inside Health Education. So I'll link it. I'll drop a link to that, again, to the page that has the links to those resources. So the Inside Health Education Newsroom is one. We also have the Inside Health Education podcast. If you don't have time to read or in this case, watch a couple of our sessions, we do have a podcast, and it does have a link to that as well. If you are watching from Facebook, great, you're on one of our social media platforms. We also have the Texas Health Education YouTube channel. So this is where we host all our TMDSAS office hours, where we hosted the application workshops, as well as the school panels that we hosted back in April. So the application workshops are just kind of the rundown of how the application works. The school panels, if you have any questions about the advising aspect of entering information in your application or what you should do, I definitely recommend checking those out. So TMDSAS doesn't provide advising services, so unfortunately, there's only a limited information that we can provide that's limited really to how to enter information in the application itself. If you want any kind of advice on what to do, school panels do offer a lot of great information regarding essays, coursework, postbac, GPAs, um, letters of evaluation, and so many other topics as well that are covered. So there's one for dental schools, there's one for medical schools, and then one for vet schools. So all that information, all those videos are on the YouTube channel, Texas Health Education Service. We also have, of course, these office hours that are hosted weekly at 1 every Monday. Next week, we'll cover how to enter your AP credits and dual credit courses. So, if for those of you who ask questions about your AP credits, next week will be a great session to attend or to watch. So that way you can see how we would enter those AP credits in, so you can get an idea of how to do that on your own as well. We also have the online communities through our Facebook page. So we have the Team DCS Hub Facebook group. That's for all our applicants. Just it's a support group for all of y'all that y'all are embarking on this journey, working on your application, as well as a non-traditional Facebook group. So for any applicants who identify as non-traditional, there is a Facebook group for you guys as well, to get kind of like a support group. And I believe we also have some volunteer pre-health advisors that are on there as well. And so if at any point you have questions, you can also reach some of the admin in that group. So go ahead and list the link to that page. Okay, and I did receive